Welcome back on the Good Morning Artesia radio show. We have the mayor, Raye Miller, with us, and we're recapping, well, we're going to now, after a great discussion about procedures and reaching out and communicating with your counselors and finding out what's going on in town. Let's talk about the city council meeting last night. And you were telling me that probably one of the bigger items that was discussed was a discussion of Halloween and trick-or-treating.
Yeah, it wound up, it really wasn't on our agenda, but at the end of the meeting, we always ask counselors if they have anything else, and Councilor Rodriguez asked if we had considered whether or not we should do a proclamation regarding trick-or-treat, suggesting to folks that they might want to trick-or-treat on Saturday, October 30th, instead of Sunday, October 31st, because a lot of churches hold evening services, and for this community, faith is very important to the majority of the folks in the community, and as a result, it makes a lot of sense to actually consider doing that. And it was agreed, and basically I'm going to issue a proclamation and ask folks to consider actually trick-or-treating on Saturday, October 30th. I believe the Chamber's downtown work with the businesses is done that same evening. And it winds up being a thing where, you know, if you're really an avid trick-or-treater, that way you can take your children and trick-or-treat in Artesia on the 30th, and then if you have relatives in Carlsbad or Roswell, you can probably go on Sunday if you're not going to church that night and let your kids trick-or-treat out of the relative's house the next night.
So to be clear, because this has happened before when Halloween has fallen on the night of a football game.
Right.
The city is not moving Halloween. Halloween is on Sunday, October 31st.
Right.
Just simply suggesting let's do the trick-or-treating on Saturday night instead of
suggesting to the folks that if they want to take their kids out trick-or-treating, that they consider doing it on Saturday, October 30th, and it'll be a great time. You know, I mean, it's a thing where I always enjoy having kids come to our neighborhood. Our lots are a little larger. A few of the neighbors don't. They darken their house so that, you know, they don't. But I figure if folks come to our neighborhood, because we have some kids, but not very many that actually live in that neighborhood. But if folks come to our neighborhood, then we should reward them. I try to actually put together a little bag of candy that has several varieties in the bag, and that way, and they're all bagged items in the bag, and then hand out bags. And there have been a couple of years where we had well over 200 kids at our house, and that's great. You know, in other words, and it's a thing where some of them are friends and family children, and most of them are folks that are just trick-or-treating, and that's a great thing. And you know, and it's almost a thing where it's nice to have a lot of folks out trick-or-treating, because the more kids and parents and stuff that you have in neighborhoods, then anyone who's actually driving through is more aware, because there are so many people and so many people crossing the streets and stuff that, you know, they're much more cautious. If you only have a few, then you worry that folks drive a little too fast like they normally do in our neighborhoods.
That's true.
But I can be accused of being one of those people occasionally. And, you know, now I do say that since I've been mayor, my speed inside the city has attempted to be 100% conformance with the speed limits, because I really don't want my officers to pull me over, and I roll down the window and they look and go, "Oh, that's the mayor." Because
but if you violated the law,
if they do, I'm telling them to write me up. Just like, you know, because it's very easy with our speed limits. You know, on Bowman we're down to 30. You know, on 13th we're at 30. On 7th we're down to 25. And I mean, it can be very difficult to keep the foot off the gas.
The only thing that I would ever try to do with that, because I've thought about that, if I'm like I forgot a cable or a cord, or I'm trying to get to an event that we're broadcasting, I've always thought, well, if they stop me now, what am I going to do? And I said, just follow me. Follow me to the game. Then you can write me the ticket there. But I need to get to the game. I don't know if that would work, but I've thought about trying that.
I don't know if it worked, but I know that I actually, and it's crazy, but I set my cruise control when I'm on 13th or Bowman so that I keep my foot off the gas, because if I don't set the cruise control at 30, invariably I'll look down and I'll be at 36, and I'm like, oh no, this is not good.
don't know if there's nobody around. So that was one of the things that, so you'll be putting out a proclamation for that. Okay.
Right. The other item that, we had, some travel training requests, but they were just normal items. We actually did have 3 hires. We had a police sergeant that was hired, and then we also had a finance supervisor and a solid waste equipment operator. And so, when we actually, and they were on the consent agenda, but when Sandy actually announced the higher positions, I had everybody, I says, well, those 3 supervisors ought to be given a Yahoo. And they were, because, I mean, to get good folks, we're excited. And it's a thing where we hope we can attract more good folks here in the future. I know that when they had the personnel, Sandy Countryman's report, she talked about a job fair and the fact that many of our employees showed up. I think it was over at the high school, showed up, brought some of the equipment and stuff to try to encourage folks to consider, if they're not going to college, to consider a career in law enforcement, fire, in the city, with the various solid waste, various departments to actually consider. I think even the rec department had representation at the job fair, which, it's a thing where there's a variety of career opportunities with the city. And hopefully the good thing about the city is it can become a lifelong career, and a person can have stability and not worry so much. I know a lot of folks, when they work in the oil field, it's feast or famine. They're getting so much overtime they don't have time to be at home with the family, and then when times turn down, they can't get enough hours to actually...
Family's trying to get them out.
Well, yeah, they can't get enough hours to make a living to support the family, and sometimes it becomes a thing where they get laid off, and then it's the hard time in this community when it is a downturn to actually find a job that can work for you. So, but anyway, now the other item that we had last night that was significant is the fire department made a presentation about our EMS personnel actually receiving additional overtime, such that they could actually be available for administering the Regeneron, and there's another drug combination that appears to, with COVID, be very beneficial to folks if they're in the very early stages of the disease, to try to actually keep them from progressing through and possibly being hospitalized. And it's a thing where council certainly did approve it. I know the hospital is also, one of their associated entities out there is also doing this type of thing. But the key becomes that, sometimes folks may have physical issues to where, traveling to get it may be a problem. And our EMS folks can not only do it there, but they can actually go to the homes and, provided if someone's not, if they're elderly or something, to where it's a real struggle for them. But now with this Regeneron product, it needs to be done early in the diagnosis of the COVID. So if someone is actually not feeling good, may lose their sense of smell or taste, and goes and gets tested and determines they have it, but they still are feeling good, that's really the time to have this product administered to them so that it helps prevent. In other words, it shows good success at trying to help prevent critical hospitalizations if it's administered early. If the person is in bad shape to where they're to the point of being admitted to the hospital or after they've been admitted, the effectiveness is not there. It's one of those things where it really aids your immune system to fight it if it's done early, but once the disease becomes significant in the body, the results are not there. But they're actually working to be available Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday each day, with a dedicated person being on overtime pay to actually be able to provide that service if folks need it. And the hospital is continuing to do a similar, or they're doing the same type of stuff. But, with the number of cases that we've seen in our community and the severity of some of the cases, particularly in some of our younger population, I know
30s and 40-year-olds.
30s and 40-year-olds that have become very ill and in some cases have actually deceased out of it. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where trying to do anything that we can to help folks avoid being one of the bad statistics, or even if they recover. I know a friend of mine who's young wound up, I think he never thought he would be. Well, he wound up, he spent 7 days in a hospital in Las Cruces on oxygen. Now, thankfully, he wasn't on a ventilator, mm-hmm. but he was not in good shape. And, at this point, he's still in a recovery process and still on oxygen, even though he's back home and moving around and stuff. He's being very careful because it was certainly more severe than he ever probably perceived that he would be susceptible to, being young and in relatively good health.
So the supply of the Regeneron or whatever, would that still be coming through from the hospital then?
It winds up being a thing where the hospital and the state provides it to our medical personnel, the EMS folks. There is no actual cost to us for the drug, and the hospital is the same way. It's been paid for either by the state or the federal government to where they want to try to get it out and make it available. The hospital charges a fee for the administering because there is a process, and our fire folks, I think it'd be like $175 or whatever, but obviously folks can apply for insurance reimbursement and stuff on that. But our whole focus is that if this is something that helps reduce the number of hospitalizations and critical care type cases in the future, then it's one of those things where with as much of the problem. And so at this point, what the fire department has proposed is actually doing this for October, November, and December.
Okay.
Which, if you look at last time in the COVID, it kind of spiked and then things started down. Well, it seems like right now we're seeing with this new variant a resurgence of problems in the southeast quadrant of our state. And so as a result, anything that we can do for this interval to see if we can lessen the number of folks who become critical, and hopefully the ultimate, although there's no way to ever prove it, mm-hmm. the statistics, we have less deaths and less critical, is the goal.
Is the goal. We're just about out of time. Was there anything else from the council?
No, we had committee reports and we had discussion and updates, from infrastructure. Byron Landfair does a great job. He's got multiple hats, And, I told him everybody else, personnel has safety stats, police have stats, fire have stats, community development has stats.
Where are your stats?
Yeah, why don't you get you some stats? And he says, well, we can get stats if you want us to prepare them. I go, no, I'm kidding.
I don't know if he'd want the stats that he could bring.
Yeah, the other thing that we did was I gave the council just a recap. There was about 60 pages of our quarterly budget report. And at this point, our expenses that each department has had, virtually every department was under budget substantially, and the other departments were just on budget, and there were really no problems at all with our expense side, and thankfully our gross receipts in the last couple of months have been better than budgeted. So right at the moment, we're cautiously optimistic. So
knocking on the wood there.
Yeah.
So, all right. Mayor, thank you as always. Appreciate you coming in, and we'll see you here in a couple of weeks.
Hopefully so.
All right. Let's head to the news.
Here, they'll be getting a 5.9% boost.